Тримай ще один. Відкуди контролю?
Хорошо.
Охуєть.
Та там всьому пізда, щось там хтось і був.
Блядь.
In the early hours of dawn, the silence along a volatile sector of the eastern Ukrainian front line was shattered by a thunderous eruption of gunfire. The Ukrainian Azov Brigade, known for its combat experience and resilience, launched a sudden ambush that left Russian forces scrambling for cover. What began as routine patrols quickly descended into a chaotic and deadly clash.
Я чую, надо буде настрілювати нормально.
У них там подкрепление прибыло. Пришло прям?
According to Frontline sources, the ambush was meticulously planned. Ukrainian scouts had been monitoring Russian troop movements for days, identifying weaknesses in their patrol route. The strike was timed for maximum effect, hitting Russian soldiers at the very moment they least expected resistance.
Я кохаю вас, хлопці, я включив.
Русский войска идет за мной!
Heavy automatic gunfire echoed across the battlefield as the Azov fighters unleashed a hail of bullets and grenades. Russian troops, caught off guard, attempted to regroup, but the intensity of the assault fractured their formation. Explosions ripped through the air, turning the once quiet landscape into a scene of destruction and smoke.
Давай. Давай. Мы потрошей!
Берем позицию. Держать,
Пошел нахуй, мне буду блядь!
For nearly an hour, the firefight raged without pause. Ukrainian fighters advanced methodically, maneuvering between shell craters and burned-out vehicles. Russian soldiers tried to hold their ground, but the element of surprise and the ferocity of the Azov assault proved overwhelming. Reports indicate that several Russian positions were completely overrun. Communications among Russian ranks faltered, leaving many units isolated and unable to coordinate an effective response. The sound of wounded soldiers crying out mixed with the sharp cracks of rifles and the distant thud of artillery.
Зліва підари стараються пройти. Зліва замішаний рух. Ротний, Олі, до мене.
As the clash escalated, Ukrainian fighters pressed deeper into Russian defensive lines. Close quarters combat broke out in trenches where soldiers battled with rifles, knives, and sheer desperation. The fighting was brutal and personal, each side aware that survival hinged on raw determination.
Давай. Проходь.
Тут развилка налево.
Пробуй.
Давай, защищай.
Finally, after suffering heavy losses, Russian soldiers threw down their weapons and surrendered. Witnesses described scenes of confusion as Ukrainian fighters ordered the prisoners to lie face down on the ground. The capture marked a decisive victory, stripping Russian units of manpower while boosting Ukrainian morale. Ukrainian soldiers shouted commands with authority, their rifles trained on the captives, ensuring no one dared to resist. Some of the captured Russians appeared stunned, trembling from the shock of the ambush. Others were visibly injured, clutching wounds hastily bandaged by Ukrainian medic. The battlefield was a grim reminder of the chaos they had just endured, destroyed equipment, lifeless bodies, and trenches littered with broken helmets and shattered rifles.
Як себе почуваєш? Зрозумів. Все. Все. Є.
Footage later released showed the moment Ukrainian fighters began leading groups of prisoners away from the combat zone. Their hands raised, the captured troops trudged through the mud under the watchful eyes of armed escort. A few Ukrainian soldiers allowed themselves faint smiles, a rare sense of triumph amid the relentless brutality of the war. Military analysts noted that the success of the ambush was not accidental. It was the result of weeks of reconnaissance, coordination, and discipline. The Azov Brigade exploited terrain, timing, and intelligence to devastating effect. One analyst remarked, "They struck at the exact moment when Russian defenses were weakest." The aftermath of the clash was haunting. Smoke continued to rise from smoldering wreckage as Ukrainian troops secured the battlefield. They searched for documents, radios, and maps abandoned by fleeing soldiers, hoping to uncover details about Russian supply routes and future movements. Every scrap of intelligence was considered valuable.
Відходи контролю.
Хорошо.
Охуєть.
Заходимо, давай.
Тримай. Пішла ще одна.
Ще одну.
Ukrainian commanders praised their fighters for their discipline in handling prisoners, stressing that each captured soldier represented not only a military gain, but also a psychological blow to Russian morale. At the same time, they emphasized that the war was far from over and that new battles awaited just beyond the horizon. Russian sources, meanwhile, struggled to explain the scale of the defeat. Reports of captured soldiers quickly spread across social media, sparking outrage among families back home. In Russia, silence from official channels only deepened speculation, while Ukrainian officials used the moment to highlight the weakness of their adversaries.
Кінець траншеї, руку. Продовжуємо руку. Ще одна рата відстала.
On the front line, Ukrainian soldiers celebrated quietly, sharing rations and cigarettes as they caught their breath after the battle. They knew their victory was temporary, that Russian forces would regroup and counterattack sooner or later. Yet for now, they held the ground, a small but vital achievement in a grinding war. As night fell, the battlefield was eerily quiet once more. The Azov Brigade had left an unmistakable mark on the day's fighting, capturing enemy soldiers and sending shockwaves through the Russian ranks. For those who had fought in the ambush, it was a moment they would never forget, a brutal clash that proved, once again, that determination and strategy could change the course of war.